Welcome to the Praxis Report, the podcast that tries to combine political theorization with practical solutions on how we can confront the major political challenges of the day. I'm your co-host, William Barth.
And I'm your co-host, Jonathan Brown.
Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about the nomination of Tulsi Gabbard as director of national intelligence for our country, one of the highest level security state appointments that you can achieve. Tulsi Gabbard, of course, has a long career in the United States Congress. She was also a candidate for president. And there's a tremendous controversy surrounding her nomination. So we're going to be talking about that today. Last podcast, we talked about Robert F. Kennedy, and many of the same theoretical strands that surrounded the Kennedy nomination also surrounds the nomination of Tulsi Gabbard. So we're going to get into that, try to unpack it, theorize it a bit, and then try to provide a practical response for how people who are progressive or care about human civilization and progress and progressive approaches can respond. So, John, what did you think? What do you have to say about the Tulsi Gabbard nomination? And
this is a big deal to me. I've followed Tulsi's career for many years. To me, the big issue that I focus on a lot is the war issue. And Tulsi Gabbard, of course, is a very flawed and imperfect politician. But as far as U.S. politicians goes, she is one of the very few in either party who has in any way critiqued the war machine. And for that reason, I have always been kind of following her career. She started as a Democrat. She's from Hawaii. She is also from a Hindu religious background. And she initially was this star of the Democratic Party. You know, they try to portray her as this hip young woman of color who goes surfing, and she's Hindu. And she also actually served in the military in the Iraq War, I believe.
correct.
So she was promoted pretty heavily in the Democratic Party, but she sort of started to step out of line with the Democrats on the war issue. She repeatedly critiqued the Democratic Party and the neoconservative agenda of permanent war. She has critiqued the Iraq War. She critiqued the war in Ukraine. She has critiqued the war against Syria. And she has questioned why we are committed to this, what she calls regime change wars. And because of this, she eventually left the Democratic Party and is now, I believe, an independent. So her going from a Democrat to an independent who is now nominated by Trump, in my opinion, is a remarkable transformation and an indictment of the fact that the Democratic Party is the party of war, the party of the war machine, the military-industrial complex, and the neoconservative agenda of imperialism is primarily the Democratic Party at this point.
And John, this is a sea change of politics because most current day Democrats, like myself, who remember the 1960s, really got involved in politics based on one single issue, and that was the anti-war issue, the movement to end the Vietnam War. And that really, for my entire, the baby boomer generation, that was the issue of the day. In fact, the Vietnam War probably characterized politics, where you stood in politics for the next half century in politics.
Well, and for me, it was as a millennial, it was the Iraq War.
The Iraq War.
War on terror. And that
was... but it was distinguished, slightly distinguished, because in Vietnam, we were being drafted and coming home in pine boxes, fighting, trying to conquer the Vietnamese people who courageously defended their country against the American attack and actually defeated the great United States of American Army fighting often with bows and arrows, and
Yeah.
this poor Vietnam country defeating the great military of the United States of America. Of course, you had the warmongering response saying, "Oh, we should have nuked Vietnam, or we didn't fight it hard enough, or we dropped more bombs on Vietnam, I think, than in all of World War II. Still couldn't defeat the Vietnamese people. Don't forget, the Vietnamese people had been fighting for the hundreds of years before the United States. The Vietnamese fought off French colonialism, and prior to that, they had to fight the Chinese. So they've been fighting their whole history, and finally attained freedom and independence from foreign control, from Chinese control, from French control, and from American control, and created an independent country. Socialist, to be sure, but that's their business. That's what the Vietnamese people wanted. And that's what they fought for, and they won for themselves. But anyway, I didn't mean to go off subject here. This is a sea change, because most liberal, progressive, democratic politics was characterized by those of us who were anti-war. That, led initially by, Eugene McCarthy and Robert Kennedy, and later by Jesse Jackson and Martin Luther King Jr. and Cesar Chavez, and all of these great sort of humanitarian, human rights-based anti-war leaders. And to see this happening, that the Democrats, the liberal Democrats, have become the party of war on the Russian Federation, war on the People's Republic of China, war in Taiwan, war in Ukraine, war on Palestine, war on Syria, war on Lebanon, war on the Arab world, virtually the Arab world, is just astonishing. It's obnoxious and astonishing at the same time. But that is what's happened. And if you're a liberal Democrat, you got to question your politics.
Well, and one of the biggest things that they attack Tulsi Gabbard on is that a number of years ago, when she was in Congress, she went to Syria and had a meeting with Bashar al-Assad, the president of Syria. And the hearings that took place for her confirmation were filled with hysterical, absolutely hysterical rantings from these senators who were insanely outraged that she would have the chutzpah to meet with Bashar al-Assad. Now, this idea that it is evil and wrong to meet with the foreign leader of a country,
of any country,
this idea that the Democrats are opposed to diplomacy, that they are opposed to negotiations, they are opposed to peace talks. They would have preferred Tulsi Gabbard toe the line and say, we want to overthrow Bashar al-Assad, overthrow his government. But in this Senate hearings, they grilled her, accusing her of being a traitor, essentially, to America, to put the interest of America. And they, of course, similarly criticized her for defending Edward Snowden, who was a whistleblower who exposed national surveillance on American citizens. And they also criticized her as being a defender of Russia and Putin. So in all these issues, the Democrats have taken the line of the war machine against Tulsi Gabbard.
Exactly right. And the attack on her as a traitor for even acknowledging whistleblower laws. Don't forget, I mean, we have this tortured, obnoxious history that in the past, liberal Democrats that were some of the leaders in trying to stop the disruption of the civil rights movement, of Martin Luther King's civil rights movement by the federal government. Programs like CONTELPRO, whose objective was to disrupt the African American civil rights movement for ending segregation and achieving integration in society. And you had these wars like the war in Vietnam, the war in Iraq, the war in Afghanistan, all of which not only the United States lost and spent billions of dollars and decades fighting and caused countless death. But you have this incredible history of why we need whistleblowers and why we need to stop illegal programs that the federal government is promoting, like CONTELPRO, that disrupted the Martin Luther King civil rights movement. These are illegal activities. These are crimes. And we need whistleblower laws to protect people who expose crimes and criminality, whether it's in government or corporations or the Catholic Church or anywhere else. And here you have the liberal Democrats attacking whistleblower laws, promoting criminality in the government, promoting criminality in any other sector of American life, saying that if a whistleblower is a traitor, someone who exposes crimes is a traitor. Tulsi Gabbard tried to defend herself the best she could. She said, well, maybe she disagreed with how Snowden went about his whistleblowing. Now, that's not the point.
Yeah.
The point is that we have whistleblower laws for a reason, to end crime and criminality. And these senators are promoting criminality in the government. That's what
let's watch that clip. Let's watch the clip. This is a great clip. I mean,
it's a wonderful clip to expose this.
United States. So let me ask you again, do you believe, as the chairman of this committee believe, as the vast majority of members of our intelligence agencies believe, that Edward Snowden was a traitor to the United States of America?
Senator, if confirmed as Director of National Intelligence, I will work with you to make sure that there is not another Snowden like me.
Media. It's not a moment to propagate theories, conspiracy theories, or attacks on journalism in the United States. This is when you need to answer the questions of the people whose votes you're asking for to be confirmed as the chief intelligence officer of this nation.
Oh.
As my colleague said, this is not about you. It's about the people that serve the intelligence agencies of the United States. Is Edward Snowden a traitor to the United States of America? That is not a hard question to answer when the stakes are this high.
Senator, as someone who has served in
yes or no, is Edward Snowden a traitor to the United States of America?
As someone who has worn our uniform in combat, I understand how critical our national security is.
Apparently you don't. Apparently you don't. Let me ask you. I've worked very hard.
Okay.
Incredible. Incredible.
Wow.
Incredible. So just incredible. So in other words, I'll dare you question the national security apparatus and the military industrial complex, the people who gave us the war on Vietnam, the war in Iraq, the war in Afghanistan, the war in Ukraine, endless, reckless, illegal, immoral war after war after war, all of which we've lost, by the way, every single one of them. Who cares as long as you're making billions of dollars? And well, if a few million people die, so what? They die as long as money is being made. I'll dare you question that. I'll dare you. That's what the liberal Democrat of today does. How disgusting, how obnoxious, how despicable.
Yes, it's absolutely despicable. And the fact that they're asking her if Edward Snowden is a traitor when Snowden was a hero. This senator, this Democrat senator, is saying she's a conspiracy theorist because she believes in Edward Snowden. He says she's attacking journalism. Well, the journalists are the ones who peddled the lies that led us into the Vietnam War, peddled the lies of Iraq having weapons of mass destruction that led to the Iraq War, peddling the lies that led to war in Gaza. So these so-called, Democrats and their establishment media lackeys, they are all pawns of the military-industrial complex. This guy is up here defending the war machine, defending the national intelligence agencies that are the ones whose job is to destabilize and destroy and loot and plunder and pillage countries all over the world for profit of wealthy multinational corporations in the United States.
They're sponsored by Boeing, General Dynamics, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, and so on and so forth down the line. As long as money is being made and war is being conducted, don't you dare, again, just like the vaccine question, don't you dare question our war-making initiatives. Don't you dare. You're a traitor. You're un-American if you question, the ability of these corporations to profit from endless war. And in the same way, don't you dare question these manufacturers of potentially drugs that might be unsafe. Don't you dare challenge the nuclear power industry that might create a nuclear energy accident that wipes out a city or something like that. Don't you dare challenge the corporate control of our federal government in any respect. If you are, you're a traitor and you're un-American. This is the Democrat of today. It's shameful.
It's absolutely horrible that we are, and again, just like how they treated Robert Kennedy with Tulsi Gabbard, as you can see from that clip, they do not let her finish a sentence. He's hysterical. He's screaming at her. He's interrupting her, cutting her off. And
so again, he cuts off debate, cuts off discussion, cuts off deliberation, so that these important issues are not even discussed.
Absolutely. And when it comes to Ukraine, he goes on to grill her about Russia and Ukraine, accusing her, like they accused Trump, of being a Putin puppet, a Russian stooge. Because Tulsi Gabbard, to her credit, criticized NATO and criticized the United States. She accused us of using Ukraine as a proxy war to try to do regime change against the Russian Federation,
which is a war on the Russian peoples without congressional approval and authorization, and without the authorization of the United Nations General Assembly or the United Nations even Security Council, which is an illegal act, which would be considered a war of aggression or a war crime.
It's absolutely a war crime, and I think it exposes the establishment Democrats, as well as a number of these war hawk Republicans in the Senate. They are on the side of the military industrial complex. And it seems that Trump putting Tulsi in this position, the hopeful thing we can take from this is that this will signal an end to the war in Ukraine of some kind. That this will, we've already discussed on the podcast that Trump has made statements that he wants to end the war in Ukraine. He said he would do it on day one. Obviously, that didn't happen.
Yeah,
but
no surprise there. But
no, exactly. But he has signaled that he would like to have a negotiated settlement to the Ukraine war, which is the approach that Biden and the Democrats want to accelerate the war. They want
to escalate
the war. Absolutely.
Yeah, so, to the brink of global thermonuclear war, which Trump, to his credit, warns against and protects us again. Again, Trump's an imperfect vehicle, but for now, he is the only, as we say, as we said before many times, he's the only show in town. He is capturing the peace mantle. By the way, recent reports are that Trump has now called for hard to believe, democratic elections in Ukraine. Can you imagine? Wow. They've suspended democracy in Ukraine. The government that we're spending billions of dollars on is not a democracy. They claim it is, but it's not a democracy. They've canceled elections. They stifled dissent. And Trump, to his credit, is saying that Ukraine needs elections in order to enter into a negotiated settlement to the conflict with the Russian Federation. Long-standing war. We've gone onto it in prior contexts. Why America attacked Ukraine, we don't know. They always say Russia attacked. No, 2014, the United States supported an illegal act of war, overthrowing the democratically elected Ukrainian government. Americans had no business attacking Ukraine. They did, and in supporting that coup d'état. It was an act of war against the sovereignty of Ukraine. It shouldn't have been done. And then we get into all these other issues with NATO expansion and how that threatens Russian security, having been attacked twice through that corridor in World War I and in World War II. In World War II, losing 27 million Russians. But that's the subject of another podcast. The Ukraine war itself is a subject in itself. Like Vietnam and Iraq and Afghanistan and these other wars, the wars that the Democrats are now the sponsors of and the promoters of.
It's completely remarkable to me that the Democratic Party and much of the left, including, dare I say, a lot of the socialist left in the United States, has revealed themselves to be full-throated supporters of the Ukraine war.
Disgusting.
And it is now left to this these right-wing populist groups to be the only real critics in mainstream American politics of
Right.
Ukraine war.
Other
Uh,
than the libertarians.
Libertarians, and then
Yeah.
of course the fringe fringe groups of anti-imperialist socialist
Yeah.
parties.
I mean, I think socialists who promote these wars are not true socialists.
No.
What do you call it? Socialists in name only, or whatever.
Yes, I mean, well,
Yeah.
there's sort of like these socialist parties that run interference on behalf of NATO, and
Right.
they do the bidding of the U.S. empire, even though they claim to be critics of capitalism and whatnot. But there's a large number of people who have fallen into that trap. And
Yeah. We might have to get on into the NATO Warsaw Pact issue, on another episode, because it's a whole subject in itself. You wonder, with the end of the Soviet Union, the so-called, what I think Fukuyama called the end of history,
yes,
why do we have a NATO alliance? There's no longer a communist alliance in the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union's not a Marxist communist country anymore. It's just like all the other market economies now. Why? Why?
right,
Other than to promote war,
right.
because we need war, because that supports the
Well,
Boeing, General Dynamics, Raytheon, Lockheed, the military industrial complex ability to make billions of dollars, and just like in the prior hearing against RFK, it's the Democrats are sponsored by these corporations. It's
Now
corrupted completely.
if the fact is, if Tulsi and Trump can stand against the war machine that is NATO and make peace with Russia, I think that will be a remarkable victory for humanity, because it will have at least put a pause on the current threat of nuclear annihilation. However, one issue we can critique the MAGA movement and Tulsi herself on is that Tulsi is mostly pro-Zionist, pro-Israel, and it's seemingly in a contradiction of her anti-war stance and other topics. She has been pretty anti-Palestinian. A large number of the MAGA people are Christian, conservative, and they have maybe perhaps a religious motivation for supporting Israel. But Tulsi is Hindu, and there is perhaps with India, there is a sort of Hindu nationalism that aligns
Yes.
with Judeo nationalism in Israel, and that is an issue. I think why I said at the beginning, Tulsi is imperfect. She has numerous flaws. She is not a Marxist. She's not an anti-imperialist in a revolutionary sense of the word. So obviously, we're not saying she's this amazing, flawless, perfect vessel of peace and utopia. But on the other hand, the fact that she takes the position she does in regards to Syria, Ukraine, Edward Snowden, I think that alone, those issues make her, at least on those issues, worthy of our support, especially given that the alternative is these Democrats and Republican establishment who are 100% in bed with the military industrial complex.
That's right. She's again, like we said about Trump and RFK, right now, with the lack of any credible, real peace-oriented opposition, a truly progressive peace-based opposition. Tulsi Gabbard, Donald Trump, the only show in town. And I think they should be supported, because if there's one long-standing critique of American foreign policy, is we have to end these endless regime change, illegal, immoral wars of aggression. We have to end it. These are immoral wars. They're illegal wars. They violate international standards in every respect, whether you're talking about Vietnam or Iraq or Afghanistan or Ukraine. If we get into the history of Ukraine, or the attack on Palestine, or the lack of a Palestine, the creation of a Palestine, the establishment of a Palestine.
Yeah, right.
All of these issues, we have to take a different direction. And right now, clearly, Tulsi Gabbard gets it, understands the issue. She's Trump and Tulsi Gabbard, far from perfect vehicles, but there is no perfect opposition credible at this point, other than these folks. So yeah, I agree with you. I think Tulsi Gabbard should be strongly supported for this position. We desperately need a candidate like that in this position, desperately.
And of course, the real question is, the real issue is when she gets into power and she is under the influence of the same
Yeah.
institution of security state apparatus, military contractors, weapons manufacturers. Of course, that is something we are not going to just blindly support her, and we're going to also recognize she serves a different wing of the bourgeoisie as it is. However, until the Communist Party, the American Communist Party, until that is strengthened to the point where we have a genuine anti-imperialism that is rooted in a sort of solidarity with the other countries of the world that are under the boot of Western colonialism and empire. Right now, as you said, the only game in town, at least in terms of mainstream politics, is these sort of libertarian right populist groups like Tulsi and others who are the only ones in mainstream.
Yeah, too bad we don't actually have an opposition Democratic Party. Too bad.
It doesn't exist.
I spent most of my life as a Democrat. Franklin Roosevelt. If my father was a Franklin Roosevelt Democrat and I was a Bobby Kennedy Democrat. My brother was like Eugene McCarthy, but I like Bobby because of what he could do in civil rights and what he did for the civil rights movement. But anyway, and his personal model. I mean, he influenced again a generation. I became a lawyer because of Robert F. Kennedy,
Right.
and his anti-war, pro-civil rights position and what he did. And he influenced not just me, but a whole generation like me, So it's a sad story, isn't it?
Yes, and we're very far removed from the era of the New Deal liberal. Now we're at the kind of, what is it? The war machine liberal.
The war machine liberal. The
It's
war machine
replace
liberal.
the FDR liberal.
Yeah, and the sad part is that I had thought that LBJ and the pro-war wing of the Democratic Party was defeated, and instead it's the exact opposite.
Yes.
People like Tom Hayden, who led the anti-war movement and was a staunch supporter of working within the Democratic Party, reforming the Democratic Party, and he accomplished so many great things with his organization, the Campaign for Economic Democracy, to change the Democratic Party. To see the degeneration of the Democratic Party is just such a sad story.
It's incredibly sad. I think the Democratic Party has been shown that it is only moved further and further in the direction of supporting war, imperialism, corporate power,
Correct.
tyranny. It has gone in the exact opposite direction of a progressive working class party.
And abandoning the working class who were ravaged by inflation, gas prices, price of eggs, just and what are the Democrats paying you? They were in office for 4 years. They controlled the Congress, and they still only wanted to pay you $7.25 for an hour of work. How despicable is that?
Right.
To say nothing about Medicare for all or universal health insurance, national health insurance, the thing that John Fitzgerald Kennedy used to talk about back in 1962.
Well, I think we're going to have to keep our eye on the future developments regards to Ukraine, regards to Tulsi Gabbard, and the entire issue, because the main issue we always go back to on this podcast, we always talk about the war and the empire, the imperialist war machine of as being one of the primary issues of today. And that's something that we will continue to analyze, critique, and challenge in a very revolutionary manner on this show.
Yeah, I think the peace movement, or the peace movement, because it's not just an anti-war movement. To build peace, as President Kennedy used to always talk about. You need initiatives to create to build peace institutions and peace structures, and that's a big part of the campaign. But also, exposing the war machine that the Democratic Party has become and the liberals have become. We need to do that, and I think no, without question, now we know through the polls that Donald Trump won this election based on the Democrats' aggressive war on Palestine and the Palestinian people. That was a major, if not the major factor in Trump's victory. So we're going to pick up on that, and we're going to keep talking about that in future episodes. John, why don't you close us out and tell us what we have in store for the future?
Well, we're going to continue to discuss this issue, and we appreciate you joining in to watch us today. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you like what we are doing, if you like our analysis, please like the video, leave a comment. If you hate us, leave a comment and let us know why you don't like us. And be sure to subscribe to our channel. And if you like what you hear, join our Patreon. You'll get exclusive content. Until then, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.
Peace.